This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
The South Tunnel Elementary School 2nd grade class would like to present you with this. A mural we have drawn of you bugs helping us fight the grasshoppers away.
The 1998 film A Bug's Life is one people tend to forget about, at least by Pixar standards. It goes forgotten in comparison, but watching it yesterday, I think it feels more poignant than ever. A Bug's Life is a story about a bunch of ants coming together to fight off the very mafiosi grasshopper oppressors. Every year they have to work hard to collect and leave a ton of grain in offering to the grasshoppers. Only our protagonist Flick accidentally causes all the grain to fall into the water this year. So now the grasshoppers demands the ants all work again until the very end of the season to gather more grain for them, which leaves the ants very little time to gather and store up their own food for the winter.
Harper, since it's almost the rainy season, we need this time to gather food for ourselves.
Now, interestingly, the inspiration for this story was Aesop's classic fable of the grasshopper and the ants, despite the story actually being very different. In Aesop's fable, it is a single grasshopper who tyrannizes no one, just spends all summer dancing and making music instead of working hard like the ants do to store up his own supply of food. So when the winter comes, suddenly the grasshopper is starving and he begs the ants for some of their food, and they say no. They say, dance through the winter now. You should have worked not just for the day but with a mind for tomorrow, which seems like a story of some very righteous ants happily letting someone starve just to prove a point. I'm joking, but on the surface, these are vastly different stories until you remember the key point of A Bug's Life isn't just that the grasshoppers are cruel, or that there's easily more than enough food to go around if they just divided things fairly, or we shouldn't shoot down a creative idea. The main point is that the grasshoppers depend on the ants. Like in Aesop's fable, if the ants refused to give their food, the grasshoppers would starve. They need them to collect it. This is the point Flick realizes by the end of the film.
So who is the weaker species? Ants don't serve grasshoppers. It's you who need us.
And no matter how strong and powerful and absolute Hopper has appeared as a tyrant, suddenly the idea of power is flipped on its head, because power, often to a surprisingly large extent, is just an illusion. Yeah, today we're talking about A Bug's Life as I continue my plan to analyse, review, explore the meaning of every Pixar film over the next several months, one by one. I've already made videos about Toy Story 1, 2 and 3, both the Inside Out films, often from a therapeutic perspective because that's my job, but there's not a huge amount of psychological or character depth in Bug's Life for that kind of discussion today. There is mainly one key idea to this film, and most of that will mean focusing on the theme of power. So if you're in for that, let's begin with a really cool train. So Hopper's more general argument for his tyranny over the ants is basically that grasshoppers are better than them. They are the stronger, bigger, superior species. He calls the ants weakly and lowly and that they're dirt.
No, I'm wrong. You're lower than dirt. You're an ant.
You are mindless, soil-shoving losers, put on this earth to serve us.
And, I wouldn't actually say there's much of a racial component to this film, despite those quotes. I guess you could say many slave traders historically made this exact kind of argument to justify the trade they were benefiting financially from. We could make that point, but I think it's just more generally all sorts of groups of the elite throughout history have made these kind of arguments, pushed an idea that they are better than all others and therefore deserve their authority and greater wealth as a way to shore up their power, that those below them, like the ants, are meant to be subservient. Be that arguments in a very direct sense, like royalty arguing they were given their power as a divine right from gods, or else just looser, hazier ideas that they deserve their power, they have earned it. A billionaire saying, for example, that they earned their wealth fairly, they just happen to be so much smarter and put in so so many more hours and had a great idea, that you could theoretically do that too and reach the same level of wealth. So it's fair, you just haven't done that. Only I have, and the fact I have where you haven't proves that I am better and deserving in a vaguer, more unspoken sense. I think that's a more modern example of that kind of argument. But I mean, I've been talking about A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms recently, a story where the ruling class cement their authority by using stories about how they used to have dragons. These are, to some extent, a bit of an illusion, a bit of a trick. The idea that this current system is the natural system. This is how it's supposed to be, and therefore you should all accept it. Hopper argues it as a point of nature.
Now let me tell you how things are supposed to work. The sun grows the food, the ants pick the food, the grasshoppers eat the food.
And then the extra justification Hopper provides is a similar one. Basically that they give him grain as a necessary protection tax. They have to pay him, otherwise he can't afford to keep them safe from danger. What danger is that? Well, it's certainly not other predators they're fighting off. The grasshoppers flee in terror from birds and spend no amount of time guarding the colony from anything. So at best, it means protection against other rival grasshoppers who would carry out the exact same extortion.
You don't keep your end of the bargain, then I can't guarantee your safety, and there are insects out there that will take advantage of you.
And at worst, it just means protection from Hopper himself. He parades this supposedly enraged, super vicious grasshopper named Thumper before them. So vicious they have to keep him on a leash. You really don't want to mess with him. It takes a lot of us to keep grasshoppers like him in check, so you best pay up. But then by the end of the movie, Thumper is totally off the leash and yet follows Hopper's commands faultlessly down to the second he clicks his legs. So this too is a trick. There is no just and pragmatic reason all these ants should have to bow and scrape for the last remains of food where these grasshoppers can sit around doing nothing and revel in the wealth given to them. There is nothing to justify that at all, only the illusion of vague arguments and threats that sound like they make a bit of sense when you don't stop to question them. And perhaps the most interesting bit of characterization in this film, Hopper knows this. He is a very aware villain who totally understands his power is an illusion that must be propped up no matter what lies or manipulation or actions it requires. Because if the ants realize they outnumber the grasshoppers, suddenly the power will crumble.
Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up.
I think it's for this reason we have the character of Molt, Hopper's brother, who is a more amiable, unimposing grasshopper that undermines Hopper's scary image at every turn. He is a clue to the audience Hopper isn't quite everything he's trying to appear. So much so, Hopper has to shut him up at the beginning of the film when he starts telling a story about the bird that almost killed Hopper and how he was screaming in terror.
The grasshoppers eat the food.
And the birds eat the grasshoppers. Hey, like the one that nearly ate you? You remember? Oh, you should have seen it.
Similarly, as much as Hopper calls the ants dirt and lowly and subservient, we know he doesn't think that really. Hopper knows they have a lot of strength within them. So as we said, Hopper depends on the ants, but he also depends on the ants not realizing that. He depends on the illusion that he is unstoppable, undefeatable, the same illusion that is the bedrock of most tyrannies. That ever even trying to challenge Hopper would be foolish, therefore why bother, therefore just submit and let it grow. We might not exactly like it, but that's the way of the world. That's how it is now. Or we need the grasshoppers, or at least we shouldn't provoke the grasshoppers because maybe we'll suffer for it. The other interesting point about Hopper though is that he doesn't even need the grain he's demanding from the ants. They've got more than enough for the winter stored away here already that we can presume came from tyrannizing other colonies. Half of the grasshoppers can't even be bothered to go back and collect their payment. Hopper only does it for the sake of subjugating them and keeping them in line, and presumably the desire to hoard more wealth. But the ants don't know this. There is still something of an illusion that it is essential to give as much as they do, that sure it might exhaust the ants more and more and might risk some of them starving, but that's better than the grasshoppers starving, right? Times are difficult, we all have to make sacrifices, we're all in this together, right? The ants all go about working as hard as they can. They know they won't be able to gather everything Hopper demanded, but maybe if they work hard enough he'll let them off, he'll show some benevolence. Hopper doesn't depend on the ants, we depend on Hopper's benevolence. Until they realise otherwise, overthrow Hopper, everyone lives happily ever after. Yeah, it's quite a straightforward story really, and yet there is a lot more we need to say. Starting with Flick, who is something of an inventor, a builder. Eager to build not just smart contraptions, but a better life, a better space. Presumably a square one. Yeah, this video is sponsored by Squarespace. Anyone building and growing their own website or online business, this is the all-in-one platform you need. All of it's on there. Designing a website, linking with business email, integration, securing your domain, building SEO tools, personalized marketing campaigns, email campaigns, analytics, invoices, booking schedules, contact forms, donations, and everything else I can't fit into a single sentence. I've been building my own website on Squarespace where I will be selling my poetry book. Okay, not quite yet because there was a problem with the last print copy, but very soon you'll be able to access it from this shop page I'm creating or fill in a contact form if you want my help with editing services. This footage is all me testing it out in the first 30 minutes when I signed up, and without any need of any tutorials. I think it's all just so easy to figure out. Add elements, drag and resize everything smoothly on this grid system I really like. Change the colours, add pictures, a load more stuff I recommend checking out for yourself. So if you want the best domain name at an all-inclusive price, if you want integrated SEO tools, if you want a giant scrolling list of all the things Squarespace offer, then click the link in the description or the pinned comment for a free trial to Squarespace. And if it suits you nicely, use the code MyLittleThoughtTree to get 10% off purchasing your first domain or website. Squarespace. So, Flick is a maverick inventor coming up with weird contraptions to boost productivity, and he is eager to freely share them with the colony, only nobody is interested. Everybody shuts him down because this is a colony steeped in tradition about the right way to do things. Flick's ideas are seen as both improper and also kind of harmful, which makes some sense. His contraption here hurts people by accident. He also is the reason their offering falls into the water. I can't entirely blame them for shooting him down. There is a strong sense Flick has had failed inventions in the past that have caused catastrophe, but there's also the sense in general that ideas are dangerous. Change is dangerous. Flick isn't just a weird inventor, he is a free thinker willing to question authority, and that is an issue. As we see at the beginning of this film, he stands up to Hopper somewhat. He is the only person to do so, which is incredibly brave, but also suggests a level of hope and belief that Hopper isn't invincible, can be challenged. Whilst Flick doesn't succeed here, doesn't feel he's strong enough on his own to fight him, it does cause him to set upon the idea of recruiting other bugs who are strong enough, finding some warriors who will protect the village.
Exactly! Bigger bugs! We could find bigger bugs to come here and fight!
But again, the colony does not like this idea. They think it's mad. Not only do they think Flick will fail to find such bugs, but generally, they don't think Hopper can be fought. It is hopeless to try. It is dangerous to try. Ideas are dangerous. We should just stick to the way things have always been. The only reason they sanction Flick's plan at all is because they think it will get rid of him. Assume he won't come back, leaving them free to get on with the real plan, the real work, the sensible, the better way to do things, which is to just try harder, basically, to just work as quickly as we can. There are 24 hours in a day, you know, the issue is our work ethic, not the demands placed upon us, so just work harder and it'll be alright. They know deep down they won't succeed, but maybe if we work hard enough, Hopper will see the effort we've put in and let us off. He will be benevolent. Show compassion. Again, grasshoppers don't depend on our food, we depend on their benevolence. Although obviously the ants exhaust themselves in no time. All of them are getting sick from the work, they're not gathering enough for Hopper, let alone their own store. But what choice do they have when, as Hopper himself tells them,
ideas are very dangerous things. You are mindless, soil-shoving losers!
This is again the story they're told. Ideas are crazy schemes that only leads to more trouble and should all be cut down. Forget ideas, just work harder and submit. In my opinion, that's what's so interesting about this film, how ants are led to dislike Flick for his ideas, even though they may actually help.
It seems to me that you ants are forgetting your place.
So let's double the order of food.
They literally send him away, shut him down. A community of freedom isn't always stamped out with violence. Sometimes it is the more indirect spread of cynicism that makes people themselves wish to stamp out three thoughts, wish to criticise it, dismiss it, ridicule, turn a message of hope into one of delusion. However, Flick isn't crazy. He does find some tough-looking bugs. I mean, due to the law of a comedy of errors, they're actually circus bugs who misunderstand, but he nonetheless somewhat pulls through, and nonetheless uses their skills and his to create a circus performance, a new illusion of power that will scare Hopper. They create a bird. And the only reason the whole colony agrees to help with this plan is because they think the circus troupe are really tough warrior bugs, have this same illusion of power and strength. The second the colony realizes otherwise, they all abandon the plan and go back to submission. We don't have power ourselves, we depend on someone else who is stronger and tougher and benevolent enough to help us. That's kind of the fun parallel about the idea of recruiting warrior bugs. It's technically doing the exact same thing Hopper is already doing. Paying food to people who have the illusion of being stronger than you in the hopes they will be kind enough to protect you from other threats. The circus troupe obviously aren't cruel or extortionate like Hopper, but it's the same setup and the same basic system and the same thinking behind it. It takes a bit longer for Flick to realise this itself can be challenged. Not just Hopper, not just him as being like one bad apple and maybe we can replace him with, I don't know, a good mafia leader who looks out for their community, or a good dictator who's just trying to protect you from outside danger, or like a good billionaire. You know, rather than just challenging Hopper, imagining you can replace him with just a better version of the same idea, challenging the setup altogether and realizing we don't need them, they need us, they depend on us.
Ants are not meant to serve grasshoppers.
All they ever needed was to come together and to dare believe in new ideas, to dare question the classic ways of doing things that they've been told is just nature, just how it's supposed to be. You know, it's not the most complex story, it's quite straightforward in its message, and that is kind of the only message in this film, but it's still a very effective one that I enjoy. However, there are problems. The most triumphant moment in this movie should be the ants deciding to fight back. They defeat Hopper and send his crew fleeing. They become free ants because they realise, just as Hopper always feared, that they outnumber the grasshoppers 100 to 1. However, it's quite a short beat. They just stick him in a cannon and then they can't fire it because they're interrupted by rainfall. It allows Hopper to break free to grab Flick, and we get a bit of a chase scene before Hopper is then killed by a real bird. And not only does this extra beat feel like a bit of a drag that draws attention away from what should have been a triumphant climax, but it kind of defeats the whole point here. Suddenly the ants coming together isn't enough. Suddenly they still require this bigger predator, this larger symbol of power to do away with Hopper. The film shouldn't be about the birds. The whole point was the fake birds didn't work for the trick. The point was the power of the people coming together. And when that's been the whole singular point you've been making in such a direct way this film, this sort of beat now feels less like adding a new twist to the meaning than just undermining it for the sake of more action. Adds to that, the motives behind their uprising do bother me a little bit. They all watch Hopper beating up Flick for an extended period of time and nobody reacts. They all listen to Flick make a rousing speech about how the grasshoppers depend on the ants and nobody reacts. But the second Princess Atta, a member of the royalty, steps in directly after they've also just learned that the Hopper was planning to kill the Queen. Only now are they all outraged and does a rebellion spark. And you know, on the one hand, that's kind of truthful. Resistance often begins slowly. It often takes a much bigger symbol of moral outrage before people are truly roused into action. At a real stretch, we could argue the ants don't react to Flick's beating because they're at first still trying to justify the worldview they've allowed. That's, well, Flick was a bit of a mess. He's the reason we lost the offering in the first place. Maybe he deserved it. Maybe it's his fault for getting in the way. And it's only one incident here, and he's had crazy ideas in the past. And oh wait, the princess is in danger too. Someone respectable? Okay, now we'll do something. I guess you could make that kind of argument here, but I don't know. I think this is again just the story undermining its own point for the sake of Princess Atta actually getting something to do in the climax, which is important. I'm glad she does do something, I just don't know if this was the most satisfying method. You know, it doesn't surprise me people tend to forget about A Bug's Life. There's not much to say about Flick or Atta in terms of character depth. Hopper is the only one you could really talk about at all. Even then, most of what he is related to this very singular, straightforward message of the film that also undermines itself by the end. A Bug's Life, I think, is a flawed film. It strikes me as a studio still trying to find its feet. However, it is still an important message in my opinion, and one delivered in an entertaining manner. So if we go to the board of Pixar movies I'm arbitrarily putting together for the simple fact this is the sort of thing YouTubers seem to always do, I will place A Bug's Life bottom of the board so far. It's a good film, but it's not a great film. It has its flaws, and if you want to know why I ranked the other films the way I have, you'll have to watch my videos on them. There's a whole playlist you can find. Otherwise, let's look at how you rated A Bug's Life in the poll I put out the other day. As ever, each poll has the options of brilliant, good, and a bit flawed, so I can consistently compare the results on each, but this time I changed the options slightly and made it brilliant, good, and a bit flawed / very forgettable, which I shouldn't have done. That was stupid, it skewed the results. A bit flawed is deliberately meant to be a vague poll option so it can encapsulate a lot of different possibilities, but without drawing too much attention to itself. And now I drew too much attention to it basically, because I felt A Bug's Life is a less iconic film that might need some more impetus in the poll options for people to vote as much. But that was dumb. As a result, I've slightly edited my method to calculate its score in order to vaguely rebalance the skew, and it now scores something between 56% and 65%, so let's say 60%. This one might just be an anomaly now, but never mind. I personally would probably score it somewhere like 70%, 75%. But anyway, comment your thoughts, good or bad. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe, maybe even support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee, but otherwise, hopefully see you next time. And as ever, a special thank you goes to Flying Spider, Luke Hoare, Michael Gallagher, Ben Marie, Thafy, Chad Bramwell, and Joshua C. Follier. Thank you.